Hello, everyone. This is Dave Fidanza. I'm the Chief Information Officer at ICore Connect. We're an endorsed solution partner with the North Carolina Dental Society. We're happy to bring you some content for your platform here. Today, we're going to be talking about protecting your dental practice from new and emerging cybersecurity threats. So we're going to jump right into this here and let's look at the landscape. The first thing is, let's identify what is cybercrime. And for the most part, I think most people figure this out. It's basically people using computers or the internet to carry out crimes. And in many cases, they're compromising your security and or financial health. So none of that sounds good to me. So hopefully we're going to learn about how to beat some of this. People start asking about what are the differences between some of these things like malware, ransomware, and some other things. Well, malware actually comes from malicious software. So that's what it means. And it means what it says too. It's people trying to harm you with this software that they're planting onto your network and your computers and really to access your or your patient's data. Ransomware is actually a type of malware that encrypts your data and typically will hold it for ransom, meaning you have to pay for them to release that for you. That's certainly a high risk to your practice. So we want to identify it for what it is and then look at ways that we can mitigate this risk. So you start thinking, well, how do cyber criminals get into my practice? Well, there's a few different ways. There's hacking, there's phishing. We used to be somebody somewhere else was hacking into your router and getting onto your network. They don't really need to do that any longer because they have it embedded into web pages and other areas that'll load software for them to allow them to hack straight into your system. However, it's still important to protect your physical layer, your routers, your Wi-Fi and things like that. But more than not, the threat is coming from websites and emails. So hacking, basically, they secretly tap into your data, exploiting weaknesses. And that could be your IT security, as I said, your physical layer, otherwise known as routers and things like that, Wi-Fi. In a lot of cases, your systems are outdated. They don't have the latest patches and security, which really means that in many cases, the older practices and ones that have been in business for a while that might lapse their IT security, there can be issues that are easily exploited because you're out of date. So there's certainly ways to mitigate that, as I said, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So let's go phishing. What is phishing? You can see it's not spelled the same way as we always knew it to be. Phishing is basically they're tricking you in some way, shape, or form, and they try to make things look normal, and you then to go in and enter things on websites that banking information, login information in different ways. And you'll see here, we've got an example of this. You'll see just how tricky these people are because to the untrained eye, it looks normal, and you just think that you're going in and doing something when in fact you're on a site that is collecting your data. And so if you're typing in a username and password anywhere on a website, I should be concerned and make sure that you're on the intended website. So the attackers typically preying on your lack of awareness. And because humans are really the weak link here, the idea here is to make them aware, your staff and yourself. And things like don't open emails and attachments from strangers. That's a big mistake. If you don't know who it's coming from, you don't expect it, don't open it. So if you don't look closely, and it's easy to get hooked in the phishing scams here. So just to give you an example, this is an actual phishing scam that we received. And what you're looking at here is something that looks like Amazon, and they use the logo, so they kind of pull you in with that. But there's kind of some oddities here, the sentence structure, the spaces in that. Amazon is like the best in the world at what they do. They don't have spaces in between their sentences. And you could see that there's a call to action of some sort. There's also something really weird here. It's showing that my package is going somewhere else. It doesn't even look right. I mean, what is San Antonio, San Pedro, Texas? I don't know, right? So there's usually clues on the page, but other than that, it looks pretty good, right? So you might think, well, that's not me. I didn't order from Amazon. Maybe my spouse did or my children or something, and it might look like something, you need to address. But, at this point, before you even do something like that, go to the site, check it there. Don't rely on an email that came in that looks kind of funny that you didn't know anything about to be what's going on. So there's some important vulnerabilities you need to know here. Let's assess things. First of all, these threats are coming from your email. 9 out of 10 times it's coming from an email. So, hey, let's focus on email, right? 56% of IT experts polled recently said that phishing is the number one problem. So you're going to see a lot of these things happening. It's the gold rush in IT exploitation. So ask yourself, who can get into your email? Do you have two-factor authentication enabled? You want two-factor authentication. Sometimes you go, I don't really like doing this. Do it. You want your system, like if you're logging into your email, it'll buzz your phone and say, here's your code to log in. It's a number one protection that you can do. Are you running antivirus and spam filtering? You should be. Antivirus will scan your computers regularly for malware. They won't let malware get loaded there in case somebody clicks on something they shouldn't be. Spam filtering actually will stop those type of emails that a lot of cases, if you would wind up in your inbox. So reduce the amount of that activity, you'll reduce the exposure and the threat that you have. And then train your employees. Cyber awareness is real. You have resources throughout. You can typically find them in your state association. Look for them to recommend folks to you. They've done a lot of testing of different vendors and recommend only the best. So, when you're talking about patient data, make sure that you're using dedicated email for that, ones that are HIPAA compliant, because you get your patient data hacked. Now you're starting to talk to, the feds about that. Like, how did you let that out and what's going on there? The other thing to do is assess your IT. Like, do you keep your PCs, servers, routers, firewalls always up to date? This sometimes seems like a chore for most. And if you're not an IT person, you're probably not doing this. If you have an automatic turned on through Windows updates, that's only part of it. So it's a good idea to enlist the help of others to keep you up to date on this. And there's companies out there called managed service providers that can do that for you. Talking about the antivirus software, what happens is they scan daily. So if something gets in, it'll find it, it'll remove it. Or if something is attempted to be loaded in a computer, it'll catch it and warn you of that. But you have to keep those up to date as well. So it's important that that gets done. Make sure that your spam filtering is in place and it is a good one. There's ones out there that even come with your email provider that may be okay, but you want the best of the best to make sure that that you're being protected. And know where your data is. So if you have data that's being backed up, and how is it backed up? Is it encrypted? Is it HIPAA compliant? Does it meet all of those things? So work with managed service providers. Unless you do have a degree in computer science and you follow all the current stuff, it's best to enlist the help of others. Again, these can all be mitigated, and if you train your employees, then you're pretty much doing what you can to be as safe as possible. One of the things that we talk about humans and mistakes they made, they go to non-business related websites. They're loaded with malware. You click on something on the site, it loads the malware. Don't want to do that. So make sure your staff knows, and you should have a computer use policy. You should have an internet use policy, and both of them should forbid the personal browsing of the internet for any reason. Just keep them off there. And in fact, consider locking down your network so that people can't bring in what they call BYOD, bring your own device. Unless there is a business reason for them to be able to connect their smartphone to your internet, don't let them. You could do all the security settings in the world. If they don't do it on their own devices, then could wind up being vulnerable. Keep thumb drives out of being plugged in. Your employees should never plug a thumb drive in. They can be bringing viruses right to you and plug it right into your network. So don't do it. Humans are the weak link. So this is the key. Allowing non-employees to connect to your Wi-Fi router. There's ways that you can kind of set up a firewall between, your guests, like your patients, and your main network. And if you don't know how to do that, then don't even turn on the guest Wi-Fi. One of the things that you can do going forward here is start looking at the cloud. The cloud is going to go ahead and do a few things for you. It's going to secure your data. It'll back it up for you. It'll mean that you don't have to keep buying servers every few years and laptops. You'll be able to use your programs from home. You'll be able to open new offices without doubling your cost. So there's a lot of scenarios here where the cloud is going to be the way to go. If you look at it, the entire world is going to go to cloud computing here shortly. So start investigating that if you've not done so. There's a lot of different flavors of that, and there are certainly things that would work for you. Get educated about the cloud. Educate your employees on cyber awareness, and enlist the use of certified IT managed service providers so that they can help look at what's there, do a cyber awareness and cyber risk assessment for you, and then you can then put in place policies and procedures to protect your practice. So that concludes the demonstration for today. I hope you got something out of this, everyone, and you have a good day.